3 million people call Nevada home, and 70% of those live in Las Vegas. But back in 1901, just 200 hardy souls braved the heat and called Las Vegas home. 250 miles north, about 300 miners lived in tents and clapboard shacks in what became Tonopah in central Nevada, situated halfway between Reno and Las Vegas. At the time, Reno boasted 6,000 residents. But then something amazing happened. According to legend, a lonely prospector named Jim Butler was searching for a burro that ran off on him, and after hours in the hot sun, he saw the animal in the distance. In his frustration, he grabbed a rock to throw at it, but it was heavy, laden with silver. The short story is that he had just discovered the second richest silver strike in Nevada history. The long story is that the town soon swelled to 10,000 people. George Wingfield, George S. Nixon, and Nick Abelman transformed the city into a booming mining town with dozens of saloons and multiple casinos, and then moved to Reno when the silver veins bled out in Tonopah and its sister city of Goldfield. George Wingfield, a Reno and Winnemucca poker player, arrived in Tonopah shortly after Butler's silver strike hit the papers. He worked for Jack Carey, owner of the new Tonopah Club casino, as a faro dealer, and once he showed his worth, he was allowed to invest in the casino. He eventually owned the building. As with most mining towns, retailers made the bulk of the cash. Saloon owners offering whiskey, roulette, poker, and the occasional slot machine swept up the rest of the money. In 1902, Wyatt Earp arrived with his wife Josie. He worked as a deputy marshal, chasing down claim jumpers instead of the cowboys he chased in Tombstone, Arizona. Then he co-founded the Northern Club. Nick Abelman arrived by automobile in 1904 after traveling from Detroit, where a local mob had murdered his saloon partner. The high plains of Tonopah and nearby Goldfield may not have been much safer, but mining was certainly more profitable. By the following year, Wingfield and Nixon were worth more than $2 million each. They and Abelman grub-staked poor miners like Birch McQuitty, soon to be known as Three-Fingered Mac after a dynamite accident, by lending them cash for supplies against possible fortunes in mining claims. Virgil Earp became a Goldfield deputy sheriff in January of 1905. The winter conditions were brutal, and he died of pneumonia in October of the same year. Nick Abelman opened the Boomtown Saloon at 129 East Crook Street, then the Cobweb Casino, and later purchased part of the Tonopah Club, where Wingfield retained the real estate. Wingfield asked for a favor. "Hey Nick, put on two of my bodyguards as Bill Graham and Jim McKay, and give 'em a piece of the action." Abelman agreed. McKay quickly proved his mettle by catching dealer Brandy Snyder cheating the house and dumping his chips to another player. He was brutally introduced to the saloon doorframe before being kicked down the street and left in a pool of blood. As for Wyatt Earp, Abelman said he dealt a good faro bank game and occasionally asked for a favor or two, which some of us were to oblige, whatever that meant. But according to author M.M. Hickey, Wyatt was in Nevada looking for his brother Warren's killer. He tracked the man, Ollie Kennebaugh, to Bullfrog, Nevada, and the killer was ambushed on February 4, 1907. The local sheriff's office never solved the case. Nixon and Wingfield opened the Goldfield Consolidated Mining Company in 1906, and the Boston Tonopah Mining Company and the Nye County Bank were worth $30 million. That's Elon Musk and Bill Gates money. So Wingfield, now Nevada's richest man, transformed himself from poker-playing ruffian to refined businessman, and was fixing to get married and move back to his old town of Reno, which was a little more refined. When new strikes were found in boomtowns like Weepaw and Manhattan, Abelman scouted the area himself, invested in mining claims, and opened saloons with new partners Burt Riddick, a native Nevadan who hailed from the tiny mining town of Carlin, and Steve Pavlovich, who first worked for Abelman in 1910 as a bartender and faro dealer. When Abelman was chosen as Tonopah's boxing chairman, he contacted Johnny Suddenberg and Jack Dempsey to fight an exhibition. Abelman later said, Broke and hungry as he was, Dempsey sent his entire $150 fight pay to his mother back in Salt Lake. To make do, Dempsey, the future heavyweight champion of the world, washed dishes in the back of the big casino. A typical Abelman saloon in a small mining town featured poker games and a single roulette wheel. At Bell Helen, a robber burst into the bar and waved a rifle. Steve Pavlovich drew his six-gun and fired a slug next to the robber's head, and he dropped his rifle and ran into the street, where he was later tackled and beaten. The partners mounted the rifle above the bar's back glass as a reminder until the saloon and the town were abandoned. Bert Riddick ran the Tonopah Club for Abelman, and in 1917, Pavlovich managed Abelman's big casino. Dealers in the clubs made about $10 per shift, about half what the local miners were making. But dealers never worried about cave-ins and caught an occasional fiver after a busy night. Whiskey was free for workers, a dime for patrons. Cigars were usually a nickel, unless there was a storm that stopped deliveries. The big casino was a Tonopah favorite, hosting fancy dinners and weekly dances with the freshly bathed miners attending to meet ladies. Of course, many of those ladies were visiting from Diamond Tooth Lil's, the saloon featuring a brothel upstairs. "You know," Bill Graham said one evening, "we should kill that Diamond Tooth gal and take over the whores in town." McKay replied, "Well, there's enough money in that almost to make it worthwhile." Whether it was just idle talk or not, Nick Abelman heard the conversation and passed it along to George Wingfield. McKay and Graham moved to Reno a week later to work for Wingfield. Shoshone Brown took McKay's 20%, and G.T. Osborne and Chet Carpenter split Graham's shares. In 1922, Steve and his wife Mary headed to Reno, where they opened the Mizpah Buffet. As Tonopah and Goldfield's mines struggled, town populations dwindled, and Abelman too sold his businesses. And where did he go? To Reno, of course. Today, Tonopah sits along U.S. Route 95, and you'll still find little casinos, lodging, and restaurants. If you have time, the restaurant inside the Tonopah Station Hotel has excellent pie, and one of the last A&W restaurants in the country is right across the street. Although gaming was legal off and on in Nevada, it always flourished in mining towns. And even Reno allowed casinos like the Palace Club, owned by the Petrosiani family, as long as the gaming wasn't visible from the street level. So there were lots of clubs in basements and second stories. And Reno may have led the entire West in speakeasies. Prohibition might have been the law in the 1920s, but getting a drink was as easy as making a bet, or finding a hooker down in the red light district that Graham and McKay owned by the time Abelman arrived in Reno. As Hookerville was known, the stables had up to 50 rooms, a dance floor, a bar, or you could take your chances with the ladies for $3 a pop. A buck more than old Diamond Tooth Lil's girls charged. Thanks very much for watching Nevada Gaming History's look at Tonopah and Goldfield, Nevada. If you'd like a more detailed look at how the area trained Reno's Big Four casino owners, pick up a copy of The Roots of Reno at your local bookstore or at Amazon.